Hi there, and welcome to another live stream question and answer session on a Sunday night at 7 p.m. with myself, Coach Stephen. And we have also got the UK's top nutritionist, as seen on TV, Richard Smith, of course, the founder of Keto-Pro. And we shall let him into the studio, shall we? I think we will. Good evening, Richard.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
Very loud there, which is good for me because I can't hear very well. Well, we're back here every week. We're here, and immediately we've got a great question. So I'm going to go straight in because people have put remarks up already, which is great. So here we go straight away. TLV. Hello, gents. Why am I craving more fat? Does this mean I'm becoming fat adapted? Many thanks.
Yeah, quite possibly. It's I know if TLV is the person that I think it is somebody who trains extensively. The demand on the body is going to be greatly increased if you are training more often than not. Obviously, that requirement for energy is going to go up. One of the guys that I work with, who is a semi-professional cyclist, but he cycles with professionals. I think he's currently away cycling now. Going through a bit of a rough time at the moment. He's binged a little over Christmas, come out of being fully fat adapted, so he's struggling to get back in. But one of the questions, going off kilter there, one of the questions that he put to me recently was that his recovery's beginning to take longer, and he feels that he needs to eat more. And he thought that, is it because he wasn't consuming any carb? But his output had increased massively. His rate of training had gone up incredibly. And that's what I put to him. Well, are you training more? You know, training more, working out more is going to require more time for recovery, more nutrients for recovery. And it's going to lead to more fatigue. And that was simply the case with him. He was training a lot harder. He was performing well beyond any limit that he had performed previously. And his body's requirement for that rest and those nutrients had increased. So he was getting cravings. He was getting cravings for carbs, or at least he thought. But quite often when we get cravings for carbohydrates, it's more of a salt issue. But fat as well. You know, the body needs fat for energy when we are fat adapted. Yes, we have an almost unlimited supply. But it's easier to convert dietary fat than stored body fat. That said, I mean, he does 4-hour cycles. I think something stupid around about 360 watt output at 92% of his VO2 max, which is absolutely crazy. But yeah, I mean, I should imagine if TLV is the person that I think it is, that they are fat adapted. I think the requirement, it could be hormonal. It could be that the time of year, your body could be colder. It needs to store more. And yes, we can store fat. And that's a common misconception in regards to our lifestyle, is that, you know, and I've been guilty of saying it previously, that, you know, eating fat doesn't make you fat. Eating fat doesn't make you fat, but it does. Excess consumption of that fat can store body fat. If you were to eat ad lib, you know, protein and fat as and when you wanted to, you're very unlikely to become obese, you know, if you'd already dropped that weight. But that's how I gain weight, is by consuming extra. And I don't want to use the term calorie, because we know calorie is a bum word in our field, but it's that energy still needs to be accounted for. And that wiggle room that we have only has that, you know, a set elasticity before we start to store body fat. And it could be stored in the muscle, or it could be stored as body fat. But I find if I'm becoming unwell, and a topic we did cover on the Team GB talk on Tuesday was, you know, if we do become unwell, then the body uses cholesterol to fight off viruses and infections. So our requirement maybe for more fat may go up. You know, it could be a subconscious mechanism within the body that tells us that we need to replace that. That said, I mean, you could argue that professionals like Paul Mason would argue, and I spoke with Zoe Harcombe recently, she argued the same as well, that there is no known mechanism to convert dietary fat into cholesterol. I'm convinced that we do. And I think we do it through the mevalonate pathway, but I mean, that's going off kilter there. At the end of the day, this cholesterol, yes, most of it is synthesized from the body itself, but I think we need that that dietary mechanism. But it could be a number of reasons. Just feed your body, unless it's a virus. And then my best advice there would be to limit the amount of protein that you are consuming, because if you are suffering with a virus, then what happens is the body will take iron out of circulation. It will sequester it as ferritin, so it's no longer available. But the last thing you want to do is feed a virus. The virus will feed off iron. Red meat is an incredible source of iron. So if I become ill with a virus, the first thing I do is fast. And I'm not telling you not to eat, but fasting and not eating, as you guys already know, there's a lot of nuance in regards to what we do, and people think that not eating is starving yourself, and we know that's not the case. The body's got an incredible, almost unlimited supply of of body fat there. But that's what I would do. If you are going to consume, make sure it's on the higher end of the fat content in order to help that cholesterol. But yeah, it could be a number of reasons. I've noticed my requirement for fat has gone up over the last couple of weeks. Is it coincidence that the temperature's dropped and my body's maybe telling me that does it either need to store more body fat? Do I need it for hormonal production? Am I coming down with a virus? Everybody around me is suffering with all sorts of viruses at the moment. I don't feel as good as I do normally, but I'm still functioning. I'm still managing to train and put that output at an incredible high output. Yet, I'm surrounded by these people who are sick. Do I have a virus? Quite possibly, but that's the beauty of our lifestyle. My body allows me to continue to battle forward, but something is telling me to be consuming more fat. So, I have been making a point of consuming fatty cuts of meat when I am eating meat, but trying to eat more fat in general, while keeping protein to a minimum. Again, protein is incredibly important. We need X amount of protein, so I'm at the lower end of protein, around 0.5 grams per pound currently per day, with extra fat. But yeah, a couple of different options there in regards to the answer to that question. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, you've covered a lot there. I mean, the presence of fat in the intestines does signal to the brain. So you've got the gut-brain connection. And I think you're right there about fasting if you're poorly. I mean, I think that goes across the board, to be honest. And you don't feel like eating when you're not 100%, I think. So you just listen to your body. But the question was pretty well covered there. Does it mean you're fat adapted was sort of the root of the question. It possibly does, because your body is saying we'd quite like some fat. I mean, so you could be. I mean, the more you eat this way, the more your body gets used to fat and absorbing fat and producing bile, and your stomach acid improves. So listen to your body. I think that's what Rich was pretty much saying there, is listen to your signals and just go with it. Now, we've got another person, Joe, who's new. I know it's Joe, but he's hidden under the name of Birdie Tattoo. Hi, guys. Recently started carnivore, interval running, and have a 30-mile hike run in the lakes in March. It's 8 weeks away. I'm hoping to be fat adapted by then. How would you go about fueling this? So just to give you some background there, Rich, this is somebody that I have recently encountered. He's a brilliant guy to coach, actually, and full of questions, and so dedicated. One of the things I want to say to everybody that's watching who's maybe on the fence, you've got to go for it. Don't be wishy-washy. Don't think, well, I'm going to do it 5 days out of 7 or something like that. You've got to go for it. Now, you can either go for it by jumping all in, or you can have this like graduated approach where, like we do in Fat Club, you do week by week different things. You take something out and replace it with something better. So you might take out foods that contain lots of lectins and replace it with more protein, for instance, just as an example. Anyway, so I said to Joe, I said, come onto the live stream tonight and ask you a question. Here he is. Great. Geordie guy, which is good. So, which means he goes out in this cold weather without a coat, by the way. So, yeah. Now, I believe if you go for this within 8 weeks, you could be pretty much fat adapted. He's been doing it for longer than from today. So what do you reckon, Rich? Do you reckon that's achievable?
Yeah, look, fat adaptation is the creme de la creme of what we are trying to achieve. We can create ketones incredibly quickly. Without even being ketogenic, we've created ketones. Fiber from plants, for example, will create butyrate, which will break down into beta hydroxybutyrate eventually. And that's not saying that fiber is essential, but I'm just making the point that we've all produced ketones at some point. But when we begin a ketogenic or carnivore journey, the ketones that we predominate are acetoacetate and acetone, which are wasted ketone products. I said they're not wasted, but wasted in the sense that we are addressing now. But the creme de la creme is beta hydroxybutyrate. It takes time for the body to upregulate this, because what the body does is it creates the ketones, acetone and acetoacetate, doesn't really know what to do with them. So we waste many of them. We waste them through the breath and through the urine. And this is what the breath monitors and the urine test strips are designed to detect. So when we begin our journey, we test with a test strip and we get obsessed with chasing that dark purple color. I've been there myself. And yes, it is a gauge. It does mean that you are burning more fat technically, but you can do this by increasing the amount of dietary fat that you do. It doesn't mean that you're becoming more fat adapted. Any color change at all is a signal of wasting ketones. And that's fantastic. But this is the gateway basically to becoming ketogenic. You're going to confer lots of benefits, but it does take a while to become adapted. And during that journey, the first few weeks is where most people will fall off the wagon. One, because of keto flu, but two, for someone who trains, they are going to notice a massive impact in their body's ability to put that output, give that output. If you're lifting weights, you're going to be lifting a lot less. If you're a sprinter, your times are going to be slower. If you're a long distance runner, you're going to feel more fatigued. And this is a natural process. The body or a typical body is geared up for burning sugar. And it's not our natural state, but we've become accustomed to this over a lifetime of what better word, of abuse. We've been consuming lots of carbohydrate based on the glucose, and we become glucose burners. We're sugar burners. Every part of the body is geared up for this. The body makes these adjustments in order to maximize its ability to process this product. But we decide to become ketogenic or carnivore, and then we are basically restricting this compound, and we're telling our bodies to become adapted. Why isn't it working? I've started keto or carnivore. My energy is poor. I was going to say something else. We're struggling with concentration. My weights have gone down. I can't all of these things, and it's because the body's adapting. So there is an adaptation period. This adaptation period is different for everybody. I dare say it probably took me a good 6 months to 12 months to become fully adapted. Now, that said, I have seen people adapt in as quick as 12 weeks. So if you've already been on the journey, then there is a good chance. But it doesn't mean that you're fully adapted even after that 12-week period. The adaptation process still continues on after that. But it becomes... The question is, are you going to become adapted enough in order to perform at the level that you want? Now, if you are an experienced runner, or anyone who trains for that matter, at a high intensity, now, even though probably a lot of your running is going to be zone 2, I've got no doubt that you are doing sort of threshold and tempo work. That is one of the best ways to upregulate the monocarboxylate transporters. The monocarboxylate transporters, or MCTs, not to be confused with MCT oil, is how we process the fat to use for fuel, and through the carnitine shuttle, and through a number of enzymes within the muscle that allow us to maximize the ability to perform at a high level and indeed function. So this isn't for someone who is an athlete. This is for everybody. But in my experience, because an athlete would train at that level quite often, and the zone 2 running, which is the fat burning zone. So basically, in essence, a carbohydrate athlete is taking carbohydrate, but you're training your body to burn fat, which when you think about what those words that I've just said, it doesn't make any sense. You take carbohydrate and then you go on a zone 2 run to train your body to burn fat. The whole system is back to front, and I don't understand why other athletes are not seeing this. It's plain and simple. The science and evidence is there, but they've been blinded by the sugar companies and so on and so forth. But basically, this process of training in zone 2, which is a low heart rate zone where you teach your body to burn on or rely on body fat. The fact that you've been doing that would suggest that if you've been on the journey for the last couple of weeks, you may be able to upregulate those systems in time. I think it'll be tight. And what I would suggest is not breaking the routine that you're on now. Continue pushing forward and look at this event as a test, a gauge, if you like, and from that you can move forward and see and compare future performances. There is a chance. You could fuel for this. So I mean, you're already geared up for fat burning if you've been training in zone 2. But think of fat refeeding in the same way that you would with carbs. So we consume carbohydrates. Carbohydrates break down to glucose. Glucose is stored in the muscle and liver as glycogen. And then we believe that this is what gives us energy. But it isn't. It's blood glucose that gives us the energy. And Professor Tim Noakes has highlighted this many times, and including on one of the podcasts that I did with him a few months ago, that it's blood glucose. It's not glycogen. As long as we have sufficient glucose in the blood, we can continue to push forward during our event. But in the terms of glycogen, that glycogen is then converted into glucose. So I see the correlation there, but the fact is you don't need any, because the body is capable of producing that amount of glucose naturally through gluconeogenesis. But think of it the same way. So instead of carb loading, we want a fat refeed, we want a fat load. So I consume the day before an event, I try not to eat 12 to 16 hours before doing an event. I want to be as light as I can on my feet. So I don't want food in transit. I want to make sure that I've been to the toilet, in the morning and as light on my feet as I can. So I will fat feed the day before, but at least 12 to 16 hours before the event. And I'll do it using fats that are hard at room temperature, saturated fats that are not going to leave the body quickly. Things like, I wouldn't fat feed on MCT. MCT oil is fantastic. I produce it. I'm a big advocate of it, but it isn't gonna help you with this in regards to storing fat, because MCT doesn't store. Omega-3s are very difficult to store in the body, so this isn't going to fill the intracellular myolipids either. So you want to think about the saturated fats. Electrolytes, again, that was a topic of controversy last week. Say what you will, electrolytes are essential they're essential for life. If you are training to a higher intensity and for long periods of time, we're going to need electrolytes in some form or another. So make sure you're getting plenty of salts in. And then there's exogenous ketones, the route you could go down. You could look at exogenous ketones. This will override that upregulation process. So if you're not fully fat adapted, you can benefit considerably from the utilization of exogenous beta hydroxybutyrate through supplement form. And even a carbohydrate athlete who is not fat adapted or keto can benefit from using these. And this is why the Tour de France winning team Jumbo-Visma used them. And in a statement after the Tour de France, they were asked if they do use them. They can't lie, because obviously it's there in black and white in what they are consuming. But they did say that they didn't think it makes a difference. To which people have come back to me and said, well, they said it didn't make a difference. Well, if a compound you were consuming is making a difference, you're not going to tell the rest of your competitors. So read into that what you will, but that's the compound that I'm using now. I use exogenous ketones for them. I think it fires up my brain. As I say, I haven't been too sharp over the last couple of days. I've been surrounded by people who have been suffering with viruses, one beginning with C in particular. And I wasn't feeling too sharp coming onto the call today. So this beta hydroxybutyrate has allowed me to flood my brain with all the energy that it needs in order to answer these very, very good questions. But I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think actually, Joe, I did say to Joe that Rich would give you a full answer because he's into the supplements as you design and distribute them. But that's not the only reason, because you're an athlete and also you've reversed your health. So I just thought it was worth him hearing that. I think, you see, this is what I was saying about transitioning. Some people go all in, and I really get a lot of faith in how he's approaching it, that it will be, 100% going for it. And I think that for some people with the right personality traits, that can really boost things. I'm not advising that, by the way, because some people do need a graduated sort of slide into it after 8 weeks, removing stuff every week. But that's great. And Rich, no one would know that you weren't feeling great, because that's 2 questions and you've been on fire, mate. So yeah, that's good. Like, we must stress, especially as Mark Bell's had his YouTube channel completely deleted. We can't give health advice. We can't give medical advice. We can't diagnose. We can only give you information. All right. So then you can take that information. So I will say to Blake, after a blood test of 7.6, which is nanomoles per litre, because we're in the UK, I think, you're looking at a range of about 10 to 35 is sort of the normative ranges. So theoretically that's low, but then you got people like Sean Baker have low testosterone. I definitely think you could have another test. I don't know how long you've been carnivore, and I don't know enough about you, but yeah, that so officially, yeah, looking at the ranges, that's a bit low, but I don't necessarily think that's a big problem if you are, you know, feeling great, you've got no pains, you can go to the toilet and there's no pain in passing water and all those sort of things. That's certainly something to retest. But I do know that, you know, big influencers like Sean Baker have had low testosterone, and, you know, that was maybe 5 years ago, and it made a big splash in social media because he's a big guy and he's muscly, and you know, eating carnivore and beating world records on the rowing machine. And I'm not a big fan of just looking at numbers. I'm definitely into looking at clinical presentation. So I would not be overly worried if that was me. But we can't recommend things like TRT. You're already doing weightlifting, cold plunge, sauna ground, and etc. And also, I guess you're sort of eating keto or carnivore. How do you feel, Blake? I'd be really interested to know. Can we move on, Rich, or do you want to add to that?
Yeah, only really quickly. I mean, it's, you know, when we look at these things, it's the ranges, and you've mentioned it lots of times, that the ranges are there for an average person, and an average person is sick and living this lifestyle. Generally, we're a lot fitter and healthier than many. Do we really want to be in an average range? You know, so I would ask that question. It's fantastic to get these tests, but if Sean Baker's testosterone is low, then it's clearly not causing him, you know, any issues whatsoever. What I would say is that the body becomes, I wouldn't say sensitive. It upregulates specific enzymes and pathways, and its ability to perform tasks, and the amount of work involved to perform those tasks comes down. And we see this with insulin. When we eat less carbohydrate, we require less insulin to carry out the same amount of work. And insulin drops, yet we're still able to perform all of the tasks that insulin is there to do. Even not consuming any carbohydrate, we still allow insulin to elicit all the responses that we needed to. And I believe it's the same with testosterone. And this is one of the reasons that Paul Saladino, I believe, came away from being carnivore, is because his testosterone dropped. But I think it could be natural. I think the body is just becoming more efficient, and our requirement to carry out that work is now less because it is more efficient. So we need less of the ingredients for the same output. I test mine all the time. I say all the time, annually, and I've seen mine increase massively initially and then tank and then sort of come back years later. Why, I'm unsure, but it seems to be quite common across the board with lots of carnivores. It seems to be a process. But again, these ranges, Steve, that you mentioned, I mean, they've changed since the last time I was tested, because they were a lot lower than that. I think the max was 28 last time I looked. So I mean, these ranges are constantly changing, and we see this with cholesterol and all sorts. So I mean, I would come back to what Steve said. How do you feel? Do you feel good? You know, if you're feeling poorly, if you're feeling fatigued, then, you know, it might be a lever to pull. But there are certainly other levers that are worth pulling, which probably confer much bigger benefit without having to put any compounds into your body. And I'm not against TRT. I know lots of people who use it and they benefit incredibly well. But again, I think, you know, that would be the question for me, is how are you feeling? You know, are you performing the way that you want? You know, do you feel happy? You know, are you, you know, how's your sex drive? All these things. If you're feeling fantastic, doesn't matter what your testosterone is.
Yeah, that's very true. Sorry for that big gap there. Yes.
Hanging on.
Well, I thought you were going to get into some other thing here. Right, let's get into the next question, which is from Tam. Hello there. I can't get back into it after Christmas. I keep doing great for 4 days and then I mess up anything. I can do. I've bought beef joint and pork joint, trying to mix it up. Any advice? Well, yeah. Firstly, acknowledging that you're messing up is a good sign. And you've come on here and asked for advice. That's a good sign. And I think when people do go off the rails, the worst thing to do is get all guilty and think, oh, I'm giving up. That's it. So you're already ahead of most people that do fall off the wagon because you're not giving up. So I think it's just about creating a good habit. And when you get out of a good habit, you just got to get back into it. So there's 2 ways of doing it. And we spoke about this in a different way. You can go sort of cold turkey type of thing, like, that's it. I've had enough of this. I'm doing this from tomorrow. That's it. Or right from now, this moment, I'm doing it from this moment. Or you can say to yourself, right, I've been stupid. I know I want to do this way of eating. What can I do? What can I reduce? What can I take out? And what can I replace it with to make it a bit better? And just celebrate small victories. We do have the Fat Club on both the app and Mighty Networks, which gives you day-by-day daily advice. You can come on here. We do a live on Monday in the Mighty Networks. We do a live on Tuesday. So you've got support in the community. So I would think about what sort of person you are, how you got into it in the first place, and try to repeat that. Because obviously, if you've fallen off the wagon, you were on it at some point. So you've got to go, right, I remember when I started keto carnivore, whatever it is, how did I start it? How did I get successful at it? And I'll just repeat it. That's it. Try and think positively. Don't wake up in the morning and think, right, I'm not going to have ice cream. I'm not going to have this. I'm not going to have that, because that's not how the subconscious mind works. The subconscious mind does not like you working in negatives. It's much better to work in positives. So think to yourself, I'm going to have meat today. I'm going to have lamb today. I'm going to have lots of nice beef today. I'm going to have poultry. I'm going to have fish. I'm going to have eggs. You see, and immediately you're flooding your brain with all these nice things to eat. And talk to yourself in your head or out loud or to your partner. Get some support from somebody. And tell them what you're doing. Become accountable. You know, I give my WhatsApp out to everybody that wants a bit of accountability. You could WhatsApp me every single day with pictures of your food and be accountable. You know, there's so many different ways to approach it. Get somebody to help you, I think, you know, or go on the social media and say, hi guys, day one of the new me, and I'm going to do this, and just be public about it, or be public in not the social media way, but amongst your friends. You know, so whatever floats your boat, however you operate when you first did it, go for that. But I think Rich is dying to jump in as well.
No, look, just to echo everything that you said there, you know, we've got that private Mighty Networks group, which is fantastic. It's a fantastic support network. And as Steve said, it's a fantastic, you WhatsApp Steve, you know, if you're happy to do that, but you could pop the food into the group every day and just say to people, look, I want accountability. I want to check in here every day. You know, this is what I'm eating, you know, and if you slip up, be honest and put that in as well, because it just shows you're human. But I think you've made the biggest first step, and it's recognizing that you're struggling to get back on the wagon. And I think if you understand in a little bit more depth why these things are happening, then it allows you to pull the levers that are required to get you back on that track. And it comes back down to sugar addiction. And this is triggered by the catecholamines. So we have things like dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and indolamines like serotonin, which are, you know, these are synthesized from amino acids, tyrosine and tryptophan. And we need cofactors in order to produce these, like iron, zinc, and vitamin B12. So every time you're not consuming those foods for a start, you're not giving your body the ammunition, if you like, to create these neurotransmitters. But serotonin is a neurotransmitter that leads to positive sensations, things like relaxation and satiety. And when it's converted into melatonin, it helps us sleep. And all these factors help. But long periods, and I'm going to go off on one a little bit with this now, but periods of physical and physiological stress, which is what you're doing when you're worrying about it, increase cortisol and adrenaline, and this interfere with the synthesis of things like serotonin. And a deficiency leads to things like depression, insomnia, and eating disorders, which is exactly what you're experiencing now. But if we look at the process that's involved, so serotonin is produced by tryptophan. It's converted into serotonin with vitamin B6 and magnesium. So a deficiency in these, again, is going to prove fatal. You're going to fall off that wagon continuously. And it's a similar story when it comes to things like vitamin B3. Vitamin B3 and things are difficult. We don't get that through eating rubbish. We don't get it through eating vegetables. It's only a compound we can get in adequate quantities through eating meat, and again with vitamin B6. But we use these in order to create serotonin. But if the body is devoid of things like vitamin B3 or niacin, then tryptophan, that amino acid tryptophan, will be used to make vitamin B3. So any tryptophan that we are consuming is used to create niacin. And it's about a 60-to-1 ratio. So that the tryptophan that we've consumed is now depleted, and now we have no tryptophan left. But sugar will make us feel better because tryptophan competes for absorption with other amino acids. But when we consume sugar, insulin is increased, insulin's released, and it speeds up the absorption. So insulin will speed up the absorption, which is why the bodybuilding and athletic community believe that sugar and all these things are pertinent to athletic performance. But it speeds up the absorption of the amino acids, except for tryptophan. This makes tryptophan more available. It's more available in circulation for the body to create serotonin. This is why when we eat a sugary treat, we get that sort of sugary fix, that release of serotonin, and this is why we chase that serotonin or the sugary treats. We're hardwired to chase these things, and our body will create them naturally when we are not consuming compounds which are blocking our body's ability in order to do that. But my takeaway from this, I've gone off on a little tangent, but we've got to understand that every time you reach for that biscuit or that cake or that thing that you know that you shouldn't be consuming, you are flooding your body with dopamine and serotonin fixes that are unnatural, and you are bypassing the body's natural mechanism in order to create them, which is going to lead to eating disorders, depression, anxiety, all of these other things. So you've got to understand that every time you do that, you're blocking your body's ability to move forward. So it does come down to hard will and perseverance and pushing through. But now you understand that every time, because you think one little piece isn't going to hurt, but it does. It blocks everything in its tracks, and then you're back to square one. You need to be strong, and once you can acknowledge the fact that eating that treat is going to hinder your progress further, it arms you with the knowledge so you can make an educated decision every time that you eat something, whether it's going to confer a benefit or not. And that's what I would put forward, is now you understand that every time you eat that food, it isn't just, or it's not a food, is it? It's the not food. Every time you eat that not food, that treat, to give you that serotonin and dopamine fix, you're preventing your body's ability to create it naturally. So you need to persevere. Go and feed up on a nice juicy steak. Eat a lump of cheese. Get some eggs. Make an omelette. If you feel hungry after, I dare say go back and stuff your face with things like olives. And I know this is a carnivore-based channel, but this is all about, step change and incremental change, whatever works for you. But it's all about getting these fats and proteins in, signaling your body to get back on track and allowing you to leave those sugary treats behind. But that's what I would put forward. My long-winded answer to combating those sugary treats and getting back on the wagon.
Yeah, you see, you're on fire, mate. You are on fire. So no one would know that you were feeling down. So BHB has possibly worked for you. But yeah, I just feel, Tam, just use the support network that you can.
Use the network.
Use it. Yeah, use whatever you can. This is where things like Facebook are good. This is where our Mighty Networks is good. You can have some banter, and you get, I hate the expression, but it's like a safe space. People aren't going to judge you. They will give you the answers that you want to hear, but also some tough love as well. Yeah, and they'll tell you what they really think, which is good, but you know it's coming from a place that's supportive rather than trying to be derogatory. And right, so Tam, hope that's helpful. And it's really sad to see that, because obviously you've been on here a few times. It's a nice Welsh name, and we want you to do well. Right, Meat-tastic. I'm not going to do me bad impressions, because someone told me off today. I've had a blood test at the doc's. My cholesterol is high, as expected. HDL is 3.1, LDL 5.7, triglycerides 0.5. Is this okay? Doc isn't happy, but I've told him I'm not concerned.
Beeping awesome. Fantastic. Triglycerides are 0.5 or lower. I mean, anything under 0.1 is pretty good. 1, 0.75, 0.5 is fantastic. HDL high, 3.5, fantastic. And LDL is high. That to me is an amazing profile, and I would be super pleased with that. In fact, I'd be disappointed that my overall wasn't in the double figures, and every time it drops into single, I'm super disappointed. But there we are. And I just seen something to put a smirk on my face when you were talking, that I wasn't laughing at what you were saying. I wasn't taking the mix. Someone said, Nick S said, new drinking game. Every time Rich says conferring a benefit, you take a shot.
Yes. Oh dear, yeah. Or my two penneth. That's the other one.
There's a few in there.
Right. Phil W. Hi, Phil. Good to have you here. Would you comment on the concern over NEU5GC in meat? Do you want to do that, Rich? Or are you...
Yes, do you know, I can't, this is something I went into depth a few months ago, and I can't remember the mechanisms and stuff behind it, and I will research this again for the next one to give you a proper scientific, richified answer. But no, is the long and the short. I can't remember. Yeah, fantastic. If you can remember,
all it is it's a negatively charged sort of monosaccharide. It's something that plays a role in life processes. Is actually used in the medical and food industries. So that straight away should make you think, well, hang on a minute, I thought it was dangerous. And you know, what do they use it for? Intestinal antibacterials, antivirals, antioxidant agents, food ingredients. So it's used in that. So I would firstly think, well, you know, if it's that problematic, why would it be used in all these things? That's the first thing. Phil, I know Phil very well, and he's not easily duped. And I think, you know, I'm appealing to his common sense. Normally, you know, if something's dangerous, I don't think it would find its way into many medical things, and it certainly wouldn't find not necessarily find its way into most food products. But let's put it this way: the mainstream doesn't seem to really think it's that bad. So yeah, it's just a 9-carbon sugar chain. That's it, and it's negatively charged. I think Bart K's done a good takedown of it, definitely, and I know Rich, if he's done some research, will be able to come up with that research next week, I think, and bring it in. So I don't know if that helps or not. What do you think? Do you think that was enough, Rich, or do you think I should?
Yeah, I think it's something we can look at. The answer you've given is fantastic. It's I think we could really rip it apart at a later date. But we see this across the board with, you know, when it comes to eating meat, the methionine to glycine ratio pops up, TAMO pops up constantly. All of these things, when you look into them, they are nothing but poorly based research, which has been constructed in such a way to make you think that the compound you're eating is bad for you, when in fact things like TMAO is based in lots of products. In fact, it's high in vegetables, but they don't tell you that. They just tell you that it's produced in red meat, and so on and so forth. But I mean, we can go into that in a lot more detail if we've got more time later on as well. But there's we see it across the board, don't we, with all of these things when it comes to eating red meats, and they are simply laughable when you look into the research and easily broken down.
I knew you would have done studies in it, Rich, to be honest. Anyway, so Heidi, let's have some bit of positivity. Heidi. Howdy, Heidi. Right. Wasn't there a TV program in the UK like that? I'm trying to get back on track after the holidays. I'm a train wreck. All right. Well, you know, let's be honest. We've covered that, I think. So there's two like-minded people on here wanting to get back on it. So maybe you could both go onto the Mighty Networks, which is there's links in the description, or there will be after the show's finished. I don't put all the links in before. I tell people what's going to happen, and then after the show, go back to the description. There'll be a link there. What would be considered an optimal level of folate on the carnivore diet? Mine is always at the low end. B12 is at the top end. Would it be advisable to eat some liver? So do you want to do the liver question first, Rich?
Yeah, liver is probably the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. You don't need an awful lot, and there are people who consume lots and lots of liver. There would be arguments against doing so, which could be the copper content or the retinol content. But again, these are all up for debate. But we're looking at reasons then to come away from things that confer massive benefit. Take a shot. So liver is fantastic, but you can also get folate from eggs. So if you're not one for liver, eggs is an incredibly high source of folate. I don't think it's a problem being on the lower end, unless it's causing issues. But it's vitamin B12 is high. That seems to cause a lot more problems with people than folate or B9. But eggs, and I know some people within the community are not big lovers of eggs, but they can, and I got to be careful I don't say that again. They can give a benefit. Yeah, eggs is a fantastic source. We certainly don't need to eat vegetables for it. Liver is fantastic, but I don't consume it every day. I probably consume top end 500 grams a week of liver, but I don't do it in one go. I tend to get liver and I'll chop it up into pieces and have a little bit every couple of days. Or a fantastic way to get liver in, if you do want to put liver in but don't like it, is ask your butcher to make some mincemeat or ground beef, depending on what part of the world you're from, and ask them to put some offal in there, and that's a fantastic way to mask. In fact, the butcher that I'm working with now, that is available on the link in my link tree, they supply quality Welsh meats, and they're all grass-fed, grass-finished, and I've been working with them over the last couple of days on making burgers that contain offal. And they were absolutely stunning. So I tried them over the last couple of days. They're not available yet, but they will be available over the next week or two. Perfect ways. I just pan-fried 2 of those and ate them. And you couldn't taste any of the liver or anything else in there for that matter. So if you do want to disguise, then minced beef from the butcher or ground beef with some offal or burgers are a fantastic way to get that in.
Yeah, that's good. Now, the reason I said that you go first is because I wanted to just say about the optimal ranges. I didn't want to bring the conversation down to something that everyone has heard. So I want to give you some practical advice first. But when you talk about optimal ranges, the ranges that you are suggested when you're a phlebotomist are not optimal ranges. They are normative ranges. That means that's what the normal person giving blood would expect to see, which is not optimal, by the way. Very rarely is it optimal. So it's about clinical presentation. You treat the person, not the numbers. The numbers give you a little clue if there's something wrong, and you can go down and make a differential diagnosis. So this isn't talking about you individually. It's talking about your question, which is about what's optimal. So I can give you the normal ranges. So in nanograms per milliliter, that's 2.7 to 17. And I had to do a quick calculation because there's the Americans watching. So in nanomoles per liter, it's 6.2 to 38.52. That's why it sounds like it's been done on a calculator. So I wouldn't worry so much about what is the optimal level for other people. I would say, what's the optimal level for me? Now, going back to Sean Baker as an example, he's got low, pejorative term there. It's a semantic argument maybe, but is it low? I mean, it seems to be pretty adequate for him. If he can break a world record and look as good as he is and be as fit as he is and not have a day off sick, then who's to say it's low? Who's to say that is actually not like his optimal range? And if it was higher, maybe it'd be worse. So that's all I was going to say. I do like the fact that you can get folate from eggs. It's such a simple answer on on carnivore. Right. Right. Now then, Blake has got a question here. Like we said last week, we're not here to push supplements. We're here to answer questions. And some of the things are about salt and all this sort of stuff. But Blake is asking, will Keto-Pro salted caramel bars ruin my life? I have one a day or every other day. That and coffee are my cheats that I really enjoy. I think Rich may have put heroin inside them.
No, I appreciate that. They are absolutely stunning. Again, this is a segue product. They're not, if you're a strict carnivore, then you wouldn't eat them. They don't contain an awful lot of plant compounds, but they do contain, this. In fact, we've removed the stevia from in the salted caramel and chocolate orange. We now use glycerol, which is a sweet fat. So they're sweetener free. There's no erythritol or stevia in them, but they do contain cocoa and almonds. The almonds we use are lectin free because we removed the husk. So in my opinion, they are, the healthiest sort of low carb ketogenic bar on the market with the lowest carb content as well per 50 gram bar. But again, not a sales pitch. They're a fantastic segue for people coming into the journey, into the lifestyle. I know people who consume copious amounts of them daily and they do really well on the lifestyle. So you've got to do what works for you. They are lovely. I agree. They are moreish. But the beauty is a lot of the fat in it, again, is MCT. And a lot of the MCT that we absorbed is taken straight to the liver through the hepatic portal vein. So the caloric value or energy value in there is heavily negated. But they do go really well with a nice cup of coffee. If you were drinking coffee, again.
And Landers is saying, I plan on taking an electrolyte drink only for pre, during and post exercise only. Question, does your body eventually find its own equilibrium, homeostasis, if no electrolytes are taken on a carnivore diet?
Yeah, I think that there is a possibility the body would upregulate those enzymes and pathways. And that's another saying that I probably use quite a lot of. So another one to take a shot with. I know lots of carnivores who do not use salt or supplement with electrolytes, and they are thriving. So some people don't need them. If you can get away without using them, fantastic. What a cheaper, easier lifestyle it would be. For me, that's what you've seen me drinking now. They work incredibly well for me. So it's down to that individual. They are preference during the initial transition phase, becoming ketogenic because of the loss of sodium in particular. So I would always recommend, using them for that transition period. Once adapted, who knows? I've been carnivore for a long time. I drink them every day, but I enjoy drinking them as well. They just make me feel so much more energetic when I'm on the bike and when I'm running, and they fire up my brain. I just feel a lot better for them. So for me, I couldn't be without them, but I know lots of carnivores in the community that do not use any salt whatsoever. So try it and see you get on. And that's probably the best way to play it. If you can do without them, then even better.
Yeah, you see, Rich is trying to get everybody to just eat real food, but there is a gap in the market because a lot of our food isn't giving you what you need, or you just need a bridge from one thing to another. Blake is saying he has symptoms of low energy, fatigue, fat around the midsection, and hair loss. 2 years carnivore with the odd cheat like coffee and a keto bar. I feel better than I ever had, but I still have symptoms. With the low energy and fatigue, there are more things to do with the environment than maybe we have time to talk about. But obviously things like not being on your laptop. I absolutely love doing the live, but I hate the fact that I have to do it on a screen. I'd much rather do it face to face with a group of 70 odd people, and we'd have a nice question and answer face to face. But so there are things you can do. You can do a bit of grounding. All that means is getting out and connecting with the earth. So sort of barefoot on some grass somewhere for 10 minutes, half an hour, get some sunlight on you. Even in the UK, just make sure you're outside. That can help. Your sleeping environment can be improved. You can get a grounding sheet actually for your bed, which is something I've got. There's loads of things you could look at. You could look at changing your macros. I'm not talking about getting the old scales out and doing that You could just have a few days where it's leaner protein. You could have some chicken rather than, say, lamb, for instance, and see if that works for you. And if you feel worse, you think, oh, maybe I needed the fat. So then you could go to fattier cuts. There is so many ways you can experiment, but because all the food is pretty good and it's not sugary, it's not going to cause any inflammation, it's just nice, wholesome, whole foods, you could experiment. And I think don't do everything at once. Just try one thing for the next 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, my best bet for low energy and hair loss would be that there's not enough protein coming in. That would be my speculation. That's not medical advice, but that would make sense, wouldn't it? Because your hair is not that important for your body systems, so it's not going to use up good protein that is needed for elsewhere. So your hair might be the sacrificial lamb. In fact, I've contacted somebody today who was vegetarian and has gone carnivore, and their hair has grown back. You wouldn't believe it. I mean, this person looked like a monk. They're completely bald here and the bits here, and now that has completely come back. So I'm going to try and get that person on. So hair loss can be quite severe. I know Rich has had hair loss via a haircut, but I'm talking about severe, hair loss. I mean, my hair was going grey and now it's not grey. So it's got bits of grey, but it was going very grey. So I put that down to more protein.
Yeah, it's when it comes to things like hair loss, lack of protein could be lack of fat, lack of potassium, but also not enough energy. And I, again, don't like using the term calorie. People come into this sort of lifestyle and they throw 16, 24 fasts into the mix. Fasting extensively can cause damage. You can leave fasting is a fantastic tool and I use it daily, but that could be a lever to pull. But I'd always look at protein first. Protein, fat, potassium. Again, protein comes high with potassium, especially in red meat. What type of meats are you eating? What type of fats? Everybody I speak to seems to confer benefit. I'm going to have to stop saying that. From eating different types of fat. Now, with me, it's more of a saturated fat. Other people that I know seem to do better off things like coconut oil and MCTs. How much of that is to do with the type of fat or how quickly it synthesizes? That's a debate for another day. But the type of fat, I'd experiment with that, and maybe the type of meats you're eating, as you say, and maybe potentially look at whether you're going too long without eating, and maybe try. This could be a perfect a perfect subject to implement that mTOR reset that we keep going on about, and eating every sort of 4 hours. Up to 4 times a day, and see if keeping in a continuous supply of those nutrients can help negate that. But yeah, that's all I'd add to that.
That's brilliant. Now, a few people asking for links. So I have put links to the Mighty Networks in the chat. I've also just put my link tree in as well, which is a link to all links. So I don't want to clog up the chat with links, but don't worry, come back. There'll be things in the description. There always is. And let's go to the next question. We really get short of time, 7 minutes to go. So yes, Heidi, my Facebook would be in my link tree, which I put in there. And then I can give, if you contact me or you put a comment on here, Rich or I can message you. Right. Cami is saying, you also say in regards to a lot.
Making me conscious. Right. There's only so many things that you can say in so many ways, isn't there? I have to think of some new ones.
Yeah, so Blake's just going back to the folate question. Regarding the folate question, I eat wild venison liver weekly and my folate is through the roof.
Fantastic.
It was actually too high in a recent blood test. So yeah, too high. You see, this is it. Was it too high? And Landers is saying about Stephen did a podcast interviewing Rebecca, certainly one I would recommend watching. A phrase she used that might help those that are sitting on the keto carnivore fence. Rebecca said, "You have to be ready." That's it, and that's true. Also, that one which is titled "Carb Loading is Nonsense." For those that are interested in endurance, that is an excellent podcast, not because of me, but because of Rebecca. And she also, thanks to Rich, actually, met Sean Sacco, who's an endurance cyclist, and she's, spoken to him a few times. So there we go. Right. Oh, look at this. We've got Rick in here, multitasking, trying to get rid of trash on this rare good weather day. I just had to mention him because he's been 40 years a carnivore. 40 years. Right. I'm looking for more questions here. Question. Here we go. Right. 5 minutes to go. Drax of the North. Lion diet, 14 days, experiencing heartburn and reflux late at night. Getting up and eating a beef patty helps, but I'm not hungry and would prefer not to eat. Previously ketovore, 2 years. What would you say, Rich?
Sorry, could you put that back up? I was reading the questions on the side. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. The lion diet for 14 days, experiencing heartburn and reflux late at night. Getting up and eating beef patty helps, but I'm not hungry and would prefer not to eat. So,
I mean, reflux generally, and there are a number of causes, but it's usually caused by lectins in the foods that we eat. What I would question is what sort of meats. So, I mean, I know lion diet is predominantly beef. Is there, if you're eating burger patties, is there any binding agent that could possibly be a lectin source? The lectins, they bind to the cells in the gut, and they cause the release of histamine, which leads to acid reflux and heartburn. In my experience, lectins are the biggest cause. Alcohol can also cause it, but obviously, I'm guessing you're not doing that. Coffee, are you consuming any coffee? I mean, that could be a contributing factor, but generally, it's a hidden binding agent or something that's coated on the meat that could be causing an issue. I've very rarely seen any issues with someone on a lion. The lion diet is generally the only diet or lifestyle I've seen that does not cause any issues whatsoever across the board with anything, other than boredom of eating the same thing. But not for me, obviously, because I love eating meat. But double check what's in the patties and see if any of the meats are coated with any compound that could potentially contain lectins.
Yeah, I think that's good advice there. And if you're really worried, it could be low stomach acid, which is what Cammie said. So I think there's lots of things you could look at, definitely. But it's the end of the time here on YouTube, and we will be going over to Apple Crumble, a platform that rhymes with Apple Crumble. I have put the link in the description. So thank you for all your questions. If you want to get your question answered earlier, you can use super chats. That's allowed, and that does get it boosted up to the top. If you want to have a look at my link tree, that's got lots of links in, and also everything we've spoken about the Fat Club is in the chat, but it will all be in the description when we've shut down and we finish the live stream. So we're going to do another half an hour over on that other platform. Rich, how are you feeling? Are you going to be all right on the Apple Crumble?
Yes, let's do it.
Now, I deliberately set him up with 2 minutes to go, thinking he will answer this and it will take him about 2 minutes. So, yes, but that didn't confer me any benefits using that tactic. So I think the thing is, when you do the social media a lot, just on that repeating the same phrase, you just get into a groove where certain things spring up to mind, and because you get the same questions asked a lot, you tend to sort of say it in the same way, because it's made sense to you in your brain. So I suppose it seems repetitious, actually. But you'll notice this, that football coaches, I mean, I like soccer, and so I'll watch the interviews afterwards every so often. And, you know, my favourite team is Liverpool, and the manager says, and stuff like this, or something like that, something very similar. And then you find that you hear it in your head all the time, and then when you're talking, you sort of adapt it or adopt it. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this hour. Do like, share, and subscribe. Thanks to everybody that has been subscribing recently. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you over on the other platform. Do you want to say goodbye, Rich?
Goodbye, Rich. No, thank you all.